my staff was all like, what are we going to do? We got to get the budget passed. I'm like, yeah, well, we'll wait them out. That's what I do with the sixth graders. And it often works. Every day when I talk to county employees, and we have over 2,000 employees, I talk to every single one on the first day. And I say, you have 3 jobs. Your jobs are honesty, transparency, and efficiency. Those are your 3 jobs. You should elect people who are sitting in the seat making decisions, who are trying to identify who doesn't have a seat at the table and making sure that their voice is heard. She said, there are kids in America today who are dreaming that one day there'll be a president or a governor or a senator or maybe even a mayor, like dreaming at night when they were like, what do you want to be when you grow up? She said, there is not a single kid in America who's writing down county executive or county commissioner.
Welcome to the Good Government Show. I'm your host, Dave Martin. On this episode, I have a conversation with Newcastle County Executive Matt Meyer. Matt has an interesting background, including being my former neighbor in Brooklyn, although we never met. He was a school teacher, a Wall Street lawyer, and he worked in Iraq helping start small businesses, among other things. Before that, he started a small business in Nairobi, Kenya. We talk about that. And we talk about how all that led him to Newcastle. We talk about the county's expanding bike trails, infrastructure projects, and how he became sort of an expert in sewage. Matt is also running for governor for the state of Delaware, so there's a lot to talk about. And I'll have all that and my conversation with Matt Meyer coming up right after this. The Good Government Show is sponsored by NACo. That's the National Association of Counties. County government is actually the oldest form of government in the United States, and it touches more people directly. Roads, highways, hospitals, schools, recycling, law enforcement, water and sewers. In most of the country, those services are maintained by the county. That's county government. NACo is a nationwide organization that represents all 3,069 counties across the USA. NACo helps county government work better together through things like sharing best practices, because when county government works well, that's just good government. Welcome to the Good Government Show. I'm your host, Dave Martin, and today I have with me as our guest, Newcastle County Commissioner Matt Meyer. Matt, welcome to the Good Government Show.
Good morning, Dave. Good to see you.
You are the County Commissioner of Newcastle County, which I understand.
County Executive.
County Executive.
It's like the mayor of the county.
Yes, it's my mistake. It is the most populous and I believe northernmost county in Delaware. Tell me a little bit about your county. What's going on?
Delaware just passed 1 million people. Close to 600,000 of them live in Newcastle County. It's about 60% of the state population lives in our single county. I'm a 6th and 7th grade math teacher by training. I have an interesting background. I was a corporate lawyer for a while. I was a diplomat in Iraq. I started a couple businesses in Nairobi, Kenya, and then came back home to Delaware, where I taught in school and then ran for office for the first time for my current position, running Delaware's largest county. I'm now in my second term. I'm the first county executive to get reelected in this position since a man named Chris Coons, who's now a senator, of course. And I'm in charge of the second largest police agency in the state of Delaware, the fine Newcastle County Police, the largest 911 center, the largest paramedic service, our largest library system, our largest local park system, and probably most importantly, our largest sewer system, being in charge of the sewers. Because if a sewer pipe breaks, you better fix it right away or you won't be in office long.
And it turns out we used to be neighbors. We didn't know each other, but we used to be neighbors in Brooklyn.
That's right. I did some time at Hoyt and Bergen right across from the Great Brooklyn Inn.
So you know what? We probably were standing at the bar together. So good to see you again.
That's right. Apologies for never buying you a drink, Dave.
Come on back. The Brooklyn Inn is still there. Now, you are one of the several, actually, county commissioners and political leaders I've talked to who was a school teacher. Does being a school teacher prepare you for a life in politics and political leadership?
So I'm in our form of government, and many counties do it differently. I'm the executive, and we have a county council, it's a legislative branch, and I beat a 3-term incumbent when I ran. My first budget, many people on county council still sided with my predecessor. So we had trouble getting my budget through, and they were threatening to do this and that. And my staff was all like, what are we going to do? We got to get the budget passed. I'm like, well, we'll wait them out. That's what I do with the sixth graders. And it often works. And so I think, not to compare all county council members to sixth graders, but there are a lot of things you learn.
Having said that, let me just say.
Yeah. Jokes aside, there are some tremendous public servants who serve in county government, all levels of government, and certainly true on our county council. But there are tactics you use. You learn as a teacher to motivate and incentivize people to actually work at any age, and we certainly put those to use in my county administration.
Are you surprised to hear that there are lots of ex-teachers who are in politics now? Does that?
In some ways, yes, in others, no. Not many of my colleagues had much interest in politics. There's sort of teachers attracts do-gooders. It attracts people that want to make change in this world. And the best of politics and the best of policymaking also attracts do-gooders and people who want to make change in the world. So in that respect, I'm not surprised. But I'm surprised in that in politics and policymaking, often it can be indirect. Often you got to go through an awful lot of hardship to make to make glacial change, whereas in teaching it's much more direct. And in some ways, that's satisfying.
Have you heard from any of your former students now that you're county executive?
I hear from almost all of them. One of them is my driver now. He's my aide. He's in college. Okay. It's his summer job. He got straight A's in my classes. So if you didn't do well,
so his resume floated to the top, did it?
So many of them have had summer jobs and various things. A number of them are teachers now, which is scary to me. And also having a former seventh grade student drive you around is no small feat for my heart either. Heart palpitation. But no, I mean, I have a wide range of students. Some of them, I was teaching in one of the roughest middle schools in Delaware. I initially was in Teach for America, program that sends individuals to high need schools. And so a number of my students have passed away. A number are incarcerated. Some of my finest students are sadly incarcerated. And some of them, I got one guy who showed up for a video shoot for my gubernatorial campaign, who's in med school in Philly. And so you get a broad range.
Oh, wow.
And it's helpful for me in making policies to have a direct line, both to students, teachers, and quite frankly, their families, to understand what we're doing that has actual impact to real people and what is not really either not making a difference or maybe making a difference and they don't even know it.
So I read recently that you have invested a lot in infrastructure in your county. So my first question is, as someone who drives over the Delaware Memorial Bridge often, you're putting a lot of money into rehabbing the bridge. Am I okay to drive over the bridge now?
You're always, just to be absolutely clear, the Delaware Memorial Bridge is safe. It's not directly my jurisdiction. There's something called the Delaware River Bay Authority. There's an authority where the state of Delaware in collaboration with the state of New Jersey manage that bridge, but they are investing quite a bit. It has been safe. It's always been safe. It will continue to be safe.
Thank you. Good. So what's going on with the bridge? It looks like there's.
And you should do it more often so that you pay tolls. I'm not. There's Delaware River Bay Authority knows the details of the infrastructure, but I think it's fair to say it is proactive rather than reactive. You do reactive infrastructure, which is a lot of what's happening across the country. You get into trouble when there's deferred maintenance. You get into trouble, and this is an attempt to take maintenance that's been deferred for years and pay for it before anything happens and upgrade the bridge so that there's no issues.
I see you've invested a lot in bike trails.
Yeah, I'm a biker myself. The primary way that we in the county have invested in infrastructure, just based on our jurisdiction, well, three ways based on our jurisdiction, is sewers and parks, open spaces, as well as your sewers, and also bike trails. We set out a vision about 5 years ago to connect our county by a walkable, bikeable trail, connecting Wilmington and Newark, our largest city in the state, and the site of our flagship state university, University of Delaware. You can't get from one to the other now by bikeable, walkable trail. We not only developed a vision to do it, but now we've gotten the resources to actually build about half of it. And it's probably 60, 70% of the resources we need to build a trail we have. And we're going to continue to pursue ways for more and more people to move around by safe, walkable, bikeable trail. Newcastle County, like many suburban counties across the country, have an extraordinary high rate of pedestrian and biker fatalities. It's not acceptable, and we're doing what we can to address that concern.
And are they getting used?
The usage. So Governor Markell funded a county project to link Wilmington, our largest city, with the city of Newcastle, which is the third or fourth largest city in the state. Old Newcastle. It's a beautiful, it's like historic Williamsburg, beautiful old town with about a 6.5 mile trail. And that has been used beyond our wildest imaginations. As you can imagine, during COVID, usage spiked because people were, for some people, it was their office. You'd see people walking on Zoom calls, and a lot of that has continued. We were expecting hundreds of users. This is Delaware traditionally, and Wilmington is known as more of a car community. We think that's changing in part because of the Markell Trail. I know people who are professionals here who are living, working, and playing every day without using a car, which is really unusual for Delaware. And we're trying to develop the infrastructure so that more and more people can do that.
Have you biked that yourself?
Yeah, I bike it 2-3 times a week. I'm known to bike commute every now and then. We're building a trail actually that is connecting the city of Wilmington with Christiana Care, which is our hospital system, our largest private employer. And that trail goes right by my office. So it can carry me from my home to provide a pathway where I can carry myself from my home to my office. So we're working on that. We expect that to be completed by the end of the summer.
So before you were county executive, what did you know about the sewage system, and what do you know now?
I knew that if you flush it or if you wash the dishes, the bad stuff should go away. And I knew that if it didn't go away, I was getting out of office, whoever was in charge of it. And that's sort of where I start today, is
Yes.
that you gotta take it away. We have expanded on that mission somewhat. So that's the most important thing we do. And in fact, if you look, as I mentioned, I've lived outside the country, and I know many immigrants who come here. When you talk to them, one of the biggest differences in public health in foreign, particularly developing places, developing countries and societies, and the United States, is how we deal with wastewater. When you have sewage literally in the streets when it rains hard, it's a public health concern. So it's among the most important things we do. And you learn that these systems are fragile. Getting the funding is not easier. Sometimes you have to cobble together the funding. We have something called a force main, which is like the I-95. It's the major highway of our sewage system running. It's a 7-foot pipe running underground. And about 1.5 years before COVID, we had a 12-foot piece of it break off. It just showed up at our headworks. It showed up at our sewage treatment plant. And we had actually, not to disgust your listeners, but we had to send divers down into the sewage to figure out where. Imagine a 12-foot piece breaks off your sewer. You don't know where it is. This is a 100-mile line sewer. Where is it? So we sent divers down and they found where it was. Luckily, it wasn't that far from the sewage treatment plant, so they didn't have to dive too far. And we've built redundancy, and now we're working on a $250 million plan to build redundancy across the whole force main, across the whole center, 7-foot center sewer pipe.
As a person who had no background in sanitation or sewage or any of those things, how do you learn that system so quickly, and how do you learn that and then be able to administrate it?
I had a cousin who passed away from cancer too young. He worked in New York and he was a researcher. His job was researching Wall Street firms. And he taught me at a young age, Matt, if you read every book you can find and try to talk to leading experts, you can usually become an expert in something in about 6 months. He's like, don't go become an oncologist based on it, right? Don't go become, I'm not saying you can do everything, but a lot of things, if you read up, you can become really smart on it. And I take that approach to a lot of things I do. So yes, I got an office. I was a 6th and 7th grade math teacher who started a couple businesses, had experience practicing law, and as a diplomat in Iraq. Nothing I did suggested I knew how to run a sewer system, but you learn, number one, read a lot, try to understand a lot. And number two, surround yourself with people who have a lot of experience and don't always agree with each other. Get one expert who believes, you need bigger sewer pipes, who's been working the sewers for decades, and then get another expert in the room who's been working the sewers for years who says, no, you need a lot more smaller pipes, and have them argue with each other in front of you, and enables you to become smarter. And so I think in a number of ways, whether running a police agency, running a library system, running a paramedic service, 911, we've done a lot of that. And over time, you start to learn a little something.
Good approach. And is that what you did with the sewer system?
That's what I do with the sewer system. It got to the point where I actually brought an article to our sewer people because I was obsessed about reading everything. What's interesting is that people who've been in something for decades who maybe were reading everything in the beginning aren't reading everything anymore, right? They're mid-career, late career. And so I started to read at the beginning of COVID how a community in France was using its sewers to understand where COVID is. And based on that, we've become a leading county in the country using our wastewater system, not just for COVID, but for public health. We're now using our wastewater system in collaboration with a woman-owned company called BioBot, a startup out of MIT, to look in our sewers to understand what's going inside what's going on inside people's bodies across our county, to understand where in our county people are using tobacco, where in our county people are using fentanyl, cocaine, various methamphetamines, both for policing and for public health.
That's research you can't get anywhere else, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's as my Tracy Searles, my head of sewers, she likes to say, everybody poops. And if you don't, please call 911 now.
There's a book about that for kids. You've talked about this a little bit. It's kind of an intriguing background. You worked overseas in Iraq. What were you doing over there?
I had an opportunity of a lifetime. I was working on Wall Street and felt like it wasn't right. We had peers of mine, not entirely, but mostly, who wanted to get a college education or needed money, needed a job, who joined the military, and they ended up on the front lines in Iraq and Afghanistan. I didn't, while I was working with, millionaires and billionaires, just trying to make money in New York. I felt like we all had a duty to serve. Deep down in my heart, I believe that everybody should serve. And so I was a little too senior to get into the military, but I ended up latching on with the State Department. I was what's called a senior economic advisor. I was deployed to Mosul, Iraq, embedded with the U.S. Army for a year. We leave the base 3 to 4 times. I basically lived on a base, which is, there are about 500 of them, 504, I think, at the time in Iraq. That there were about 10,000 Americans living on my base. It was like a small, dusty Southwestern American town. That was kind of the feel. Okay. And I'd leave 3 or 4 times a week with Americans, with a platoon of soldiers.
That was a bit of a hotspot for a while there.
It was, when I was there were about 3 what we call kinetic events. There were 3 violent events, 3 bombs going off every day in our area, Nineveh, our province. And by the time after my 12 months, I don't think entirely because of my work, but I like to think at least in part due to my work, we were down to about 3 kinetic events a week. So we went from 3 a day to about 3 a week. And we're proud of what we did. We did non-military intervention. So a lot of it was deploying capital, trying to take individuals who were attracted by the money of violence, because there was a whole economy of violence there, and trying to attract them into farming, into small business, and to some degree into the oil economy. And so that's what we were doing.
And you said you went to Nairobi?
I lived in Nairobi after college, learned Swahili, started my first business was starting a sandal making factory in Shantytown in Nairobi with young people who ended up owning the factory, making sandals out of used tires. Our timing was right. Amazon.com started while we were doing this stuff. So next thing you know, we were online. We were selling sandals all over the world. We had 30 employee owners. And for a time, the business was thriving.
You still have yours?
Do I sell my sandals? I do. Not nearby, but I do wear them.
Okay, all right.
And not just to the shower. I wear them out and about every now and then.
All right, so they're sturdy and they hold up. Good.
Yeah, they do hold. Hey, man, tires don't. What do they say? 30 years or 3,000 miles, I think was our motto.
Yeah, they don't go away.
Yeah.
So you're running for governor?
Yeah, a few weeks ago announced a run for governor. Listen, here's what I love. I love that in a time where our country is terribly divided, right? Terribly divided. I was at a conference for the New Economy Foundation, I think it's called, last year. And the first question I was asked is, Matt, there are these terrible divisions in Washington. How does that manifest itself in running local government? And I say, when someone calls me and their sewer broke, their toilet doesn't flush, or they have some 911 need, nobody cares if they're Republican or Democrat.
Yes.
My job is to deliver fantastic and efficient government service. And what's interesting is when you think about the variety of services, private sector, public sector, getting your Amazon delivered, whatever it is, services that you get every day, I think the services that local government are providing are among the most important services. Public safety, sewage, as we talked about, free library service, right? Parks and the outdoors, and providing those in the highest quality way is really important to me. And so we've done it in the county. Delaware is a small state. The state government's a little like a local government. We're interested in doing that on a state level.
One of the things I consistently hear from county executives and county commissioners is at the county government level, it's almost nonpartisan. It's get it done. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. We have partisan elections in that our county council members and county executive, you run as a Democrat or Republican, and we have right now 11 Democrats and 2 Republicans, or I'm sorry, we had 11 Democrats and 2 Republicans, and throughout now we have 12 Democrats, 1 Republican. Throughout my time, the Republicans have been often my closest allies. Their traditional Republican Democrat issues just don't often come up. A lot of it's about growth. It's about the cost of housing. It's about 911 response, and it's about your toilets flushing.
And those aren't partisan issues.
I like to hope. Now, you don't know. Sometimes things become partisan that you don't expect to, but they're by and large not partisan issues. And you go to neighborhood association meetings, people don't want to talk about partisanship. They want to talk about how to make sure the street looks beautiful, the pothole's gone, and the police show up and are courteous and do their job.
So being governor is a hard job. You're the chief executive for the entire state. You're one of 50 in the nation. Why would you take that on?
I think that when I started the small business making sandals from tires, there was an urgency about getting the highest quality product, environmentally friendly, as quick as possible to the customer. There was an urgency about keeping our revenues up, keeping our costs low, increasing profitability, and increasing what we could provide for the workers. It's frustrating to me when I see governments that don't have that level of urgency. When we run county government, we run what my staff says on Matt Meyer time. Things that when there's a presentation and people tell me the bike path or the new division within our police department is going to be created in 3 or 6 months, they know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, okay, try to do it by next Monday. And I want to see a report by next Monday. I want you to sprint. Right? Because that's when people pay their tax money, I find they get most frustrated when they think there's, people just not moving quickly. It's 4:00, time to go home, 4:01. And so I surround myself with sprinters, people who are going to work really hard and deliver for the people of the county and hopefully in about 18 months, the people of the state.
So one of the things I read when I read a couple of articles about you announcing you're running for governor is you were running.
A few of which maybe were true. Yeah. Sorry, you're a journalist. I got to be careful.
Yeah, you don't care. You said you were running on effective governance. We like that here at the Good Government Show. Explain effective governance, your version of it.
So effective governance.
Is that correct? I mean, I don't want to slag off the media. Did you say that? You're running on effective governance?
So in 2015, I'm a 6th and 7th grade math teacher, right? Spent time in Iraq, came back home to Delaware, had this crazy idea that I could run against a 3-term incumbent, according to polls, one of the most popular elected officials in Delaware, and I could beat him. And I didn't know what I was doing, and I hired a campaign manager who told me I had to knock on doors. And so along with 3 volunteers, we knocked on about 10,000 doors. I did environmental work and actually sold knives for a brief time. I'm not nervous or shy about knocking on people's doors.
You can't just gloss over sold knives. You sold knives door to door?
Yeah, they weren't Ginzu. There was some Ginzu takeoff.
Okay.
In college, I did it for like 3 days, and then I said, "This isn't for me." But it could cut through a penny. It was real.
Okay.
It could cut through a penny. And I love, going up to people and presenting. I mean, sales work, I guess a lot of what I do now is sales work, but sales work wasn't necessarily for me. I was really into software at the time and software development. But the point of it is I wasn't shy about going up knocking on someone's door. Right? Unless they have a really big dog, I'm cool with just showing up. But I didn't know what to say. And so the Rashad, the guy I hired as campaign manager, he said, knock on the door and just say, what do you think of your local government? What do you think of your county government? And write it down. And so quite a few people were positive, but more people were negative but were critical than were positive, which is a good thing for me. That's kind of how I won the election. And we cataloged everything people said, and almost everything people said fell into one of three categories. They felt like their local government was dishonest, right? They're just not telling us the truth, those politicians. They felt like it was not transparent. I'm sending you my tax money and you're misusing it. I don't know where it goes. But they felt like it was inefficient, honest, transparent, and efficient. Those three things. So when I came in fact, on my challenge coin, I don't know if I have one, it says honesty, transparency, and efficiency. So every day when I talk to county employees, and we have over 2,000 employees, I talk to every single one on the first day. And I say, you have three jobs. Your jobs are honesty, transparency, and efficiency. Those are your three jobs, to deliver that to the people of the county. What that has produced is things that a lot of voters don't think about a whole lot. When you call 911, it often takes too long. There's a national standard that over 90% of 911 calls should be answered in 10 seconds or less. We, for years, for some reason, were hovering around 60%. No one was looking at it. No one was paying attention to it. So I created a series of metrics, things you do standard in business, and said, here's where we need to be. We need to hit these national standards. It took about 6 weeks for us to hit most of these standards. It was just a matter of focusing, a matter of staffing and allocating staff based on when call volumes were coming in and the acuity, the seriousness of the call volume. And we're now running for like 4 or 5 years now. We've been running at like 93, 94% of calls coming in 10 seconds or less. During normal call volume times, it's much more than 90%. But when there's a major event, a storm or a big car accident, obviously the speed at which we can answer decreases.
When is the election for governor?
The general election is November of next year. Right now, I'm the only announced candidate. Conventional political wisdom in Delaware is that the Democratic primary is effectively the election. Okay. If there's anybody else running, the primary will be in September of next year.
And do you expect to have opposition?
I hear different rumors every day. I tell them, I say, we've raised just about the most that any candidate for governor has raised at this point in the race. Jack Markell raised more than me 15 years ago. But we're doing, our fundraising is doing really well. We're going to have we believe that we have a great story to tell. We've accomplished we have hundreds of accomplishments that we can talk about here in the county. We have a vision for the state. And as long as we raise the resources, go to mattmeyer.org if you'd like, and throw something in the pot. But as long as we keep fundraising and have the money to communicate, we think we'll be fine. Well,
that's going to lead us to our questionnaire. So our good government questionnaire, and we're going to get to the heart of your philosophy of government. Are you ready?
I don't know if I'm ready, but we will find out.
All right, we will find out. So as county executive, possibly future governor, what is good government?
Good government to me is honesty, I should say we've added honesty, transparency, efficiency, and also inclusivity, a government that looks like the people we serve. And so honesty means that, when someone files a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, saying that, I'm a taxpayer, I'm a journalist, I'm a voter who has a right to this piece of information that you're trying to hide from me, we disclose it. I work for you, and so we do everything we can to get you information. Transparency means when you pay money into our system, you can go on a website just like that we set up, just like you can check your credit card bill or your bank statement and see where the money went. You can do the same with the taxes that you pay. And efficiency, we have an obligation to look across this country and this world to find the most efficient systems and either replicate them, modify them to our needs, or create them anew. And I, of course, now talk quite a bit about inclusivity, making sure that our government, the people we hire, the people working for you, the police out on the street, and paramedics and librarians look like the community that we're serving.
How do you judge your success? What do you use as your yardstick for whether you're being effective in the 4 things that you say you want to be effective in?
So back in Ronald Reagan's time, he had Jim Baker, his chief of staff, had a parable about chipmunks and antelopes. Have you heard this before?
Not yet.
Lions, Newt Gingrich picked up on it years ago. And to be clear, to fully disclose, I don't believe in all the politics that Ronald Reagan or Newt Gingrich subscribed to. But I thought it's a great organizing principle for leadership. When you run a government with 2,000 people, or any government, often many organizations and businesses, every day you're bombarded with chipmunks. We have a house burn down. We have a tornado where a couple people lose their roof. And each day we're dealing with those chipmunks, issues that are usually small, measurable issues that we can deal with, but they take time. I could spend my whole 8 years, my 2 terms as county executive, and hopefully, God willing, 2 terms as governor, and deal with chipmunks all the time, deal with the issues that are incoming, right? But at the end of the day, we have an obligation to the people of the county and in the future of the state to move us forward, to be thinking about big things, to be thinking about the challenges of ChatGPT, the challenges of an inflationary environment, the challenges of a small group of people getting very wealthy and a large group of people who are really struggling. We have an obligation to address those issues. We call those antelopes, because lions can go and eat chipmunks all the time, but smart lions gather together in a pride and they go and hunt antelopes. We are antelope hunters in my administration. Anyone that works directly for me gets this speech in their first week of office that says, you need to define your antelopes. Everybody working for me defines no more than 3 antelopes. Sometimes it's just 1 antelope, saying, we're going to design and build 50 miles of new bike paths across the county in 8 years. That's what we're going to do. And so every week we get an update. How have we moved the ball forward? Yes, there are all these other issues. There's storms, trees are down. We need to deal with that. But what have we done in the last week to move the ball forward so that when we're done, we can say we successfully built 50 miles of bike paths in our county, things of that sort.
How do the voters, the people of your county and possibly state, how do they know if they're getting good government, and how should they hold you accountable to make sure you deliver on your promises?
That is a very, very challenging. That's a hard question because I learned pretty quickly that when you're in it's a big difference between private sector leadership and public sector leadership. Private sector leadership, more often than not, you're judged by the top line and the bottom line. If you can sell and if you can show profitability, that's all that matters. It doesn't even matter if you're telling everyone that you're profitable. If you are profitable, people will find out and you'll be successful. There are many things in government where you're successful, but no one's paying attention. It's interesting that in my world, it only matters if people know, which doesn't sound that hard. So you go and tell people, but going to tell people in a media environment where local media has been decimated, or in the worst case, decimated, and in the best case, transformed, just in the 7 years up.
Not there.
Right. It's like non-existent, been taken over by bloggers, social media. And people can say anything. People can go out and say, crime is awful in Newcastle County. People are out there on social media saying this is the worst crime ever, policing it. We need to double the number of police. But if you look at the actual hard data of police reports, our violent crime and quality of life crime, nonviolent crime, is lower than it's been in over 10 years. But how do you communicate that to people in a way they'll believe when, even if you stand up, there's some politicians standing up and saying, hey, crime is really low, look at the numbers. And there are other people yelling online saying, oh my God, but my son, this happened to my sister, my cousin, or my neighbor yesterday. It's a challenging environment. We do what we can. We try to do it creatively. We've started using the TT word, TikTok, trying to communicate with people, meet people where they're at. But it's a really fragmented environment, and it's really challenging.
If they feel like they're not getting good government, what should they do? So
one thing that exists today, in a way that it didn't certainly 20 years ago, is there's a lot of direct accountability. You can communicate directly with me in ways you couldn't decades ago. I encourage people. We try to be. People say I'm more available than any other county executive before. I make my email address that I personally read readily available to people. Now, in truth, I often skim it quickly and then just figure who I forward it to, someone who reports to me to address the concerning issues. But I hope people hold me accountable in the quality of services they're receiving, and to some degree by the price of those services. I'm a Democrat. I'm a hardcore Democrat. I believe that the public should contribute to the public good, and government should spend to invest in our future. I reduced property taxes. I'm the first county executive ever to reduce property tax. I reduced property taxes this year by 5%, just because we've been running surpluses for so many years and investing in things. We felt like it was time to give some back to taxpayers. So I hope taxpayers will look at that and say, hey, we're getting higher quality services. We're getting more parks. We're getting higher quality libraries. We're getting new policing strategies. And we're getting all of that actually for reduced costs. When you factor in inflation, it's a tremendously reduced cost.
As an elected official, what would you like people to know about how government works and, the inside look at government? And, what would you like people to know about government?
I want probably most of what I think about is how, and this was something I learned from Governor Markell, is that a lot of people, when I sit down to make a decision, there are a lot of people around the table who advise me and tell me what to do. You should elect people who are sitting in the seat making decisions, who are trying to identify who doesn't have a seat at the table and making sure that their voice is heard. Sometimes it's, single parent families facing some of the most serious struggles imaginable, living in violent communities. Sometimes it's farmers out in rural areas who just aren't heard and don't have a seat at the table. Sometimes it's students, younger people, certain demographics that certainly don't participate politically. So the corollary to that is speak up. Have a voice. It's somewhat cliche, but this is a time when when I was a kid, when people say have a voice, it was sort of like you're a lone ranger with a voice. Now, if you can put something out on social media and get 50, 100 followers to it, in Delaware, there are only 1 million people. That's a really big deal. And so speak up and speak out. We're always trying to find people who don't have a seat at the table, who have a following and have something to say and something to contribute.
You have cited several politicians, some local people, up to Ronald Reagan. Who's your political hero?
I feel some obligation to say I worked for Governor Markell. He was just on a personal level. I spent time in Kenya learning from the teachings of someone named Jules Nyerere, who was the president of Tanzania. And he, at a time when he was the first president of Tanzania, he had passed away by the time I was in Kenya, but he was renowned for, at a time when African leaders were getting huge mansions and driving the nicest cars and buying jets. He drove around in a little Volkswagen Bug. And he was famous for just kind of stopping on the side of the road and talking to the woman who was selling tomatoes. And I know there are I had some interactions with Paul Wellstone years and years ago, who had that similar. I met him because I was a student at Michigan Law and he was coming to speak before he passed, Senator Paul Wellstone from Minnesota. And he insisted that students pick him up at the airport. He said he didn't want to interact with anyone but students when he was there. Of course, he was a university professor by training, so he knew some of what he was doing. I'm attracted to people who are sort of and for the people, who get in front of people and like to hear directly the good, the bad, and the ugly from people. One quick story. When I was right after college, when I was in Teach for America, I taught in DC public schools. And at the time, Bell Mid-Atlantic and the city, the District of Columbia, had a lawsuit, and there was some settlement where Bell Atlantic had to wire all the schools with internet. We fortunately, Leckie Elementary, the school I taught in, was among the first schools to get wired. And we were selected by the mayor's office, my classroom, to be the showcase when the Washington Post and the Washingtonian came to the city paper to show off what tremendous work Bell Mid-Atlantic Bell, the telephone company, had done in classrooms. They were going to come to my classroom. The day before, the mayor's advance team came, and there was one problem. While our building was wired, we didn't have a router. I was trying to work for months through the city's procurement system. They wouldn't let me buy it myself. And so the mayor's team came. I said, listen, I can fake something, but we don't have the internet. And so they came with a router an hour later. So we had the night before the press conference, we got the internet. The next morning, we had kids doing really cool things. The journalists were there. Marion Barry gave a beautiful, inspiring speech. And then they left, and they took the router with them. So we didn't have the internet. And so I was like, what do I do? Like, that was really genuinely all for show. That's all it was.
Yeah.
And so my kids were fooled. And of course, at the time, like, it was the coolest thing, right? You could go anywhere and learn anything. You could see a map of any. It was really cool. And then, fortunately, no TikTok back then or Instagram, but I didn't know what to do. So I called the mayor's office and I say, hey, you guys took my router. You need to give it back. They said, no, it's our router. Like, you need to work through the procurement system, buy a router. So I'm like, what do I woke up the next morning. I called the Washington Post and they were very interested.
I'm sure.
Because the story was published, right?
Absolutely.
And 2 hours later, the mayor's office showed up with a router. And the moral of the story for me, now I'm on the other side of that, right? And I'm cognizant whenever I go to school or work with a community or talk to a small business owner, there's a good chance that's how they're seeing me. They're seeing me as the guy that takes the router, gets whatever I can, and doesn't bring it back. Make sure you get elected officials who keep the router there, who are going to supply the router, not put it there for show and then take it away.
Well, I am fairly confident that you are the first and only person in our series of shows and episodes who's going to cite the president of Tanzania as a political hero. So congratulations, you are outstanding.
Jules Nyerere, look him up.
Yes.
They called him Walimu. Teacher is his nickname. He's a hero of mine.
All right, so you were in Delaware on the Chesapeake, down Delaware's famous for its shore. You're taking me out. We're going out for a meal. What are we having? Where are we going? What are we doing?
A lot of choices and a lot of new choices. I happen to think I'm a little Bangkok Thai, owned by the mother of one of our fine county police officers. A Thai woman cooks some of the best Thai food. I think I was a Thai food connoisseur when I lived in Brooklyn. I think it's better here in Wilmington. Bardea is a new like 3-4 years old when I'm blanking on his name. The most famous golfer was here for the BMW championships. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. He would go there every night. He supposedly, rumors have it, he would turn to his caddy in the middle of the PGA Championship and said, I need a reservation tonight for Bardea. So Bardea right on Market Street. La Fia down the street has been here about 10 years. And across from Bardea, there's a new rooftop bar, The Coin, Quoin, that is very popular. A lot of cool places. I'm going to get shafted because I'm going to get criticized because I'm naming a small fraction of the incredible places. There's also Old Faithful, where Joe Biden brought Vice President Biden brought President Obama probably 10 years ago now, a place called Charcoal Pit, which is where I went after my high school graduation.
Charcoal Pit barbecue, I'm guessing?
Charcoal Pit, yeah. It's not like Kansas City barbecue. It's more like a down home old school diner with great burgers, great fries, great char dogs.
All right.
And milkshakes.
Now, in all this, I did not hear any seafood.
Oh, Phoebe's Fishery. Yeah. And especially down the beach. There's a host of, there's a place called Matt's Fish Camp. Yeah. Sodell Concepts. There's some great restaurants, some amazing Mexican food. Agave, it's an extraordinary Mexican place in Lewis.
I thought I was going to hear soft shell crab right off the top. No?
Oh yeah, there are crabs that are better than Maryland crabs. But
that's what I was waiting for.
Yeah, I'm not a big seafood eater. I'm a big fish guy.
Yeah.
But I don't eat. I don't eat shell. So crabs. I got to brush up on my crab knowledge, crab restaurants across our state.
All right, Al, you've got time and a lot of eating to do. All right, good. So you've had a very varied career. When you were a kid, did you want to be president? Were you president of your high school class or college class? Did you aspire to politics growing up?
I've had kind of a love-hate relationship with politics. I mean, one reason I think we've done well at the county level is I'm a little turned off by politics. I'm a lot more turned on by policy that impacts people's lives. When I ran for student council in high school and nobody thought I was going to win and I won. Okay. But I was kind of turned on the politics of it has never interested, the meanness of it, the backstabbing, the behind closed doors, secret funniness. I've never been a fan of that stuff. I'm a big fan of making good, honest policy, looking people in the eye, telling them what you're going to do, love you or hate you, having good, honest argument about what are the policies that are going to move us forward. And so at various times, I found a love of business after college, creating innovation, creating jobs. There's few things as satisfying as when you create something in your head that becomes a business that is funded, that employs people and enables them to feed their families. Few things as satisfying as that. So we've made it a big part of our platform, trying to enable small business owners and startups to do that in Delaware.
Was public service something you aspired to, though? I mean, was it always something in the back of your head that, like, I'd like to go in to be a county commissioner or a governor or a senator?
Certainly not county commissioners. Right after I was elected, a county council member who was strongly supportive of me, in some ways against her own interest, because she was going up against an incumbent county executive. She gave a very funny speech where she said, there are kids in America today who are dreaming that one day there'll be a president or a governor or a senator or maybe even a mayor, like dreaming at night when they were like, what do you want to be when you grow up? She said, there is not a single kid in America who's writing down county executive or county commissioner. Like no one wants to do these. It's sort of like the offensive line of government. We're the dregs. When your toilets don't flush or your 911 call doesn't get answered, you know it's Matt Meyer's fault. But when it is answered, or it's not like you flush the toilet and say, thank you, Matt Meyer. I've said that in a few speeches, and I subsequently have gotten texts from people saying, thank you, Matt Meyer. And that means that somebody flushed their toilet and it worked.
All right. So before we go, we like to bring it all back to good government. Give me an example of a good government project in Newcastle County that you've helped to push through.
I think every government in the country should take all the resources that are coming in, all the internal accounting information, and put it online so people can see it. So they can very easily manipulate it. So they can very easily view how much of, when I pay my tax bill, how much of that money is going to police officers? How much is going to police officers' salaries? How much is going to paramedics? How much is going to libraries? It should all be public, right down to receipts, so that you know, hey, if Matt took out, if there were 2 ambassadors who were coming through Delaware and Matt took them out to dinner in Newcastle County, he didn't spend an unreasonable amount. That's a fair expense of taxpayer money or not. So you can be a judge of the specifics. So we did that. We put that all online. You can see it yourself at Newcastle County.
All your expenses online?
Government check. All our expenses are online, which also it's good because, to be honest, it makes me think twice. When someone's coming into, I have a few county commissioners, county executives from other states coming in. They want to sit down and have dinner. And I think it's a fair expense of taxpayer money for us to talk about how our counties are relating to each other. We're not going to go to an extravagant place. If I knew that would never be public, I might go out for a nicer dinner, right? Yeah. But it's taxpayer money. There's somebody who worked really hard to earn the dollars that's being spent on that dinner. And so we got to be reasonable about it.
So when people go out to dinner with you, you're not always the first one to throw down their card.
They can call and say, Matt, why don't I pay for this one? And that means they're going to.
Or you take your personal card.
I got to be careful with that too, because then I got to pay my share based on ethics rules.
Yes.
So it's good. I think it's all good stuff. You really got to elect people who are about service. I always try to think that, listen, if I want to go and stay in the nice places and go out to the nice dinners, I should be doing something else with my life. I'm here because I agree to a certain degree of transparency in my professional life. Certainly, people have a right to know how every dollar I spend and time I spend on the taxpayer's dime, how that's spent. And they have a right to that. Every taxpayer does.
So dinner with you, we probably are going to the diner for burgers. That's
right. Local, definitely local. I'll take out for crabs if you want, David.
All right, very good. Matt Meyer, County Executive from Newcastle County, Delaware. It has been a pleasure talking with you, and probably see you again since the Brooklyn Inn. You have to make me one promise. When you're elected governor, you'll come back and talk to us.
I definitely will, David. And thank you for what you're doing. As I stated earlier, the challenge that we have in getting out the message of good government is harder than ever. The reality, as you know, is that people click on controversy, they click on conflict. And you getting out a message of good government, people across the country who are out there just trying to provide really high quality service to Americans is really important. So thank you for doing that.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for coming, and thanks for helping us tell the story. We certainly appreciate your time, and good luck in your run for governor.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Kutztown University is a smart choice for Pennsylvania students or students from anywhere looking for an outstanding college experience close to home and in the heart of Pennsylvania. With over 130 majors, KU has endless academic opportunities. Kutztown also offers plenty of on-campus housing, 24/7 dining options, comprehensive support services to ensure our student success, and so much more. Kutztown has 22 NCAA Division II sports teams, and a nationally recognized men's rugby team. How about that? Plus, you get it all with the affordable tuition of a state university. So visit kutztown.edu on the web, kutztown.edu, and see why it's good to be golden. Making sure everyone has a seat at the table. That's a good goal for good government. Matt is also the first official who cited the president of Tanzania as his political hero and as his inspiration to run for office. So that's a pretty unique political hero. Honesty, transparency, efficiency, and inclusivity. Those are his words, and they're all worthy goals for someone in office. Now let's see if he can build that into the governorship as he runs for governor of Delaware. So that was my conversation with current Newcastle County Executive, Matt Meyer. Join me again on the Good Government Show for another conversation with another leader in government to talk about what good government means to them. Make sure to like us on all your favorite social media platforms. Share our show with your friends. Help us spread the word of good government. Check out our website, goodgovernmentshow.com, and check out our show notes. Until then, I'm Dave Martin. This is the Good Government Show. Thanks for listening. The Good Government Show and A Conversation With is produced by Valley Park Productions. Jim Ludlow, David Martin, and David Snyder are the executive producers. Our editor and producer is Jason Stershic. This is The Good Government Show. Thanks for listening.